I am here today with a very interesting guest for today's episode of Pathmon Presents. I'm here with Gregg Witt, and Greg is actually heading up as a Chief Strategy Officer Engage Use and Engage Use on.co. Engage Use is a hybrid between insights and marketing agency with a very specific focus. They're focusing on brand engagement with tweens, teens, and young adults, so the younger generation of us, and helping brands, I guess, to really focus on that group of consumers. So I would be very curious today with Greg to learn, what Engage is all about, and also how he's thinking about growth and what he's been learning on his journey. So, Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So maybe in your own words, right, to do it its full justice, what is Engage Use all about?
At the epicenter of Engage Youth, it's about cultivating relevance for brands, organizations, companies, businesses, and even just initiatives in general to find a relevant way to connect with their audience. And it's building audience, creating impact, social impact, or driving sales growth.
Very cool. Very succinct. That is really giving us a good idea. Could you tell us, what are the types of companies or maybe even the types of people within those companies that say, hey, that Engage Use, that is somebody that we should work with? Like, would be a typical client of the company?
Yeah. I, I would hope at first it would be the actual young people we serve. I'm joking, but just in the fact that we work with brands, in across many different verticals, many different industries, CPG, entertainment, education, nonprofit, apparel, many. We also work with, like I said, nonprofit organizations that are primarily seeking some aspect of social change across a large array of issues. Um, Behavioral is one large one. Um, and then the actual individuals that are typically the buyer, or typically the requester or the buyer, would be in Marcom, they marketing communications. They would be within insights in the company, or they could be in product innovation,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
just innovation in general. Um, so it's, yeah, I hope that kind of paints a picture.
Yeah, definitely. It gives us an idea. What I would be then curious, right? Like such a sort of specific and interesting offer that you guys are bringing to the table. How do those, marketing leads or innovation leads, how do they actually come across Engage Use? Like what is a typical journey they would go through in order to hear about you guys and getting started?
Yeah, the typical journey, as I've discovered and as has been told to me and what data would dictate, I
Mhm.
believe then, based on those factors, that I believe. I'm not saying I completely know it. I mean, just being honest, I'm not 1,000% sure, but it's part of my role to figure out dedicated. Uh, there's a lot of word of mouth from it's without stating the obvious. There's word of mouth from having worked with so many different variety of companies, that there is sort of great work, good work, effective jobs beget more work. um, the more direct answer that you're seeking is speaking engagements, real world, virtual, but now,
Mhm.
of course, hybrid. Um, Social content, really sharing our expertise in very actionable ways to both understand, interact with, and then create some kind of call to action with various different demographics, from the lower end of tweens, teens, and then young adults. It's very different
Mhm.
along, like, you know our journey to bring clients in has a lot to do with our understanding of the journey of the actual consumer and person.
Yeah.
um, I mean, SEO is really important. Organic SEO from that content is key. Google ads, you know, I just like
Runs together.
blocking and tackling, which is
Gotcha.
something I know you guys resonate with. Um, you know, uh, Depending, like, so I've owned several agencies in the past, and worked with different companies. So we've used different platforms. Um, we've had great success with I'm not going to name the names of the companies, but with different automation softwares, and we've had great success. We've also been overwhelmed and inundated with various automation softwares as well that were probably, or safe to say, ineffectively used. So
Mhm.
I I would say that those are the primary, I guess, if you will. Maybe I'm missing something large, but those are the ones that like come to mind for how brands or how these companies find us.
Very good. Super interesting. That definitely paints a picture. You brought up SEO. You brought up obviously SEM, word of mouth being really big. I would be curious, like in your perspective, right, as a sort of head of strategy, what's your perspective on the website? Like, what role does the website for you play? Because we obviously talk a lot in the Pathfinder Presents podcast about websites. What role does it play, sort of in your vision and perspective?
In my vision, the website really should act as the retail front door, the digitally present front door, and then, I mean, perhaps more importantly, or equally as importantly, a content hub for, you know being a magnet for leads generation. you know there's proof points, there's, education, there's but it's all kind of encompassed in the way that you speak about your expertise to the world. um it's like, it's I think it's more important now than ever before, even because it's owned land. It's our owned property. We're not just subject to the ebb and flow of social platforms that just constantly give us less exposure and want more of our money, and give us, you know limited view or limited access reach, to our target audience. So
Very
yeah, the
good.
website's critical. The website's critical.
Right. And if you think about the website, like, probably you also have a critical eye on it, right? I always like to ask about sort of the strengths and the weaknesses of the website. Where do you see a strength at first of the website?
Right now I'm overhauling our whole website. So
There you go.
the strength of our website, I'm not going to say it's the greatest. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my God, that's too funny. No, what's the strength of a website in general, which is what I
Of yours.
oh, I think for us it's articulating our connection to culture. I
Mhm.
think we do a great job of cultivating relevance. We do a great job of communicating to people, to our buyers, that we involve their specific target audiences in all of the initiatives, campaigns and brand work, project work that we do. Um, and therefore we're experts or leaders in facilitating that interconnection with their audience in order to do many, different types of sort of insights, strategy, and then, marketing activation work. So I think, we do a great job at doing that. And then we do a good job of being very specific on our areas of specialization and the sort of multitude or packaged type services that fit that. Um, you know, so yeah,
Very good.
I guess it's like it's easy to spot the things that you're doing well, and then the ones that you need to improve are just like looming over your head, just like, I know
So
I
my,
need to do that. It's like, my God, we're really busy right now, and like, actually we've got 10 things to do in the queue at the moment, but at the same point, that's the process. It's developing this website, developing your website, anyone's website, especially for B2B. It's an ongoing dedication. You're never done. It's a living, breathing machine, if you will, for driving new business for us. So um, yeah,
very
no, it's a good
good.
question. I haven't thought about it other than just the work that we're in the middle of doing on it. I haven't thought of it from your perspective like that. So
Very cool. If we're coming back to your services, right? For everybody who's listening in, what would you say is sort of a main competitive advantage if somebody, starts to engage youth?
um a competitive advantage to the brands that we work with, you mean, or a
Yep.
competitive advantage
Yeah, what does somebody gain that is difficult to get somewhere else, but when working with you guys?
Yeah, our key differentiators are in having built, huge pools of access to the real audience. It's our understanding of like the cultural complexities of who to reach, how to go about reaching them, even like on the B2B side, like how to like reach them to engage them, and then how to like communicate in their language or translate their language into the marketing communications that are fitting with the brand. um, I would say you know an advantage of working with us is that like we're a combination of people who've worked like on the brand side and people who've worked on agency side and people who've just been built their own brands like myself who really just understand who are like life dedicated to these segments. So it's like our passion and then our skills and discipline, like all bundled up in one, and truly like building on that, our mission about forging positive connections between our company partners and the audiences that they serve really
Hmm.
has us dedicating ourselves to that. Like in some ways, one I guess, or in one key way, we actually also serve to sort of protect the audience from brands coming in and oftentimes misrepresenting what they're trying to do and making a fool of themselves or doing something that could be almost like inappropriate,
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
necessarily intentional, but just
Yeah, yeah.
like something inappropriate. So we play a role often much bigger than marketing or just gathering insights and knowing about trends and taking initiatives to market. Like we often like have a deeper impact. Yeah, and then just having a real technical understanding of social and content really helps us out as far as being a differentiator. Not that not that not that companies don't have that or that we're so unique in that front, but us just understanding it from like the B2B side, but then from the content creator side, from internet culture side, of just being like actively involved in not only like popular social platforms, but in the emerging social platforms. I'm just, you know, uh, being practitioners, it definitely helps. Yeah, I mean that's like a lot. That's probably a whole mouthful. Um, I would say our specialization in these in that epicenter of that like that transitioning tween to teen, like as far as our bullseye that we serve and just being
Yeah,
dedicated to that
yeah.
since like all these technologies have been developed and now that we could just see this like micro like in the trenches perspective, and then we see the macro because we've been involved in it or key team members have been involved in it from its like inception.
Yeah,
So
super interesting field. It must be super interesting because obviously the group in itself sort of like changes every what, like 3 to 5 5 years. So that is
feels like it's faster than that, like it because the
okay.
trends move, like the trends don't seem to move as cyclical or predictive anymore. And
Hmm.
but yeah, you're right. I mean, just like from the life stage, they people are cycling out exactly in those like years. So it is very like keeps you on the edge, keeps you up, must be in tune all the time, you know.
I would love to ask you a little bit about sort of your perspective on marketing, sort of as a discipline, right? I would be curious what you consider the biggest challenge when it comes to marketing when I say the word innovation.
Mm, big question. What are the challenges for the brands, right? For the brands.
Yeah, it could be the brands, like, when they want to bring in innovation in marketing, like where do the challenges sit?
Well, when they want to bring in innovation to marketing and or when they want to bring innovation to marketing to reach young people, which
Hmm.
is where our team sits, it's
Hmm.
like a key challenge is like knowing if their brand's positioned right, like even positioned with a foundation to be successful, you know. um I think when it comes to to innovation, like setting expectations on getting clear and then getting innovation in motion, and then how long it takes to see the impact of the innovation that you're building or working towards. um like then there's like challenges around resistance, like resistance to the innovation or resistance to the change. And often, like, in sort of the space that we work, it's like sometimes resistance to see it from like Gen Alpha or Gen Z's perspective versus the perspective of like internal perspective, which obviously
Mhm.
is big, you know, if you, just in general, like for innovation. um I think like challenges sort of at engage youth that we sometimes have is like anticipating, trying to anticipate their needs before they do.
Mhm.
But that comes over time. Like obviously that comes from being intelligent listeners, or aiming, seeking to be so. um there's, you know challenges to getting, and I hope I'm on track, but challenges to getting like partners to open up and share their pain points as to like what that innovation is to achieve. And then there's, I guess, like my tail and my closing on that topic would be just, any, I guess it would be resistance or maybe even resources on utilizing the emerging technologies, and then being able to go through the training and the commitment to on implementation of those technologies. Um it's a lot, and I don't envy the bigger, like, legacy, like I don't envy the big corporations that have to do this, or kind of like do or die. Not to say
Mhm.
that we're all in that boat, but the bigger, slower moving organizations that are maybe on top of their field today, who have to, start moving a lot quicker. I don't envy that position, is what I intend to say. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. I would love to switch gears a little bit and learn about you personally a little bit, right? With all the sort of content out there, and you obviously having that specific focus to, even just learn about, marketing and all the emerging technologies, but also how a very fast moving consumer group is changing. How do you decide like what content to consume? Where do you go? How do you filter? How do you make the best of your time in terms of educating yourself?
Yeah, for me, we have many different youth advisory groups, youth advisory crews that we have. Um, I'm just constantly asking them questions versus like our own engage youth initiatives or for our clients, and just listening and trying to like unlearn like everything every day, not letting like my personal interests too much
Mhm.
get in the way of like my media consumption.
Mhm.
Like I'm not, like, for instance, I've spent a lot of time like working with Disney over
Mhm.
the last decade. And so I will find myself like just watching all the Disney videos and just like understanding all of those types of influencers or talent. And then, before Radio Disney was sold, working with them, just like listening to Radio Disney all day long. But like, like maybe even like cringe, I don't want to say it, but like even cringing sometimes, but just being a like just to consume and understand from an observation standpoint, to learn. Whereas like personally, it's a double-edged sword, because me being like a professional skateboarder, and having been involved with like building, um, athletes, and building brands and apparel brands, like my personal cultural interests always lead towards, other subject matter that may not be like the youth culture that I'm helping the brand,
Mhm.
attain or connect with deeper. So I'm always conscious of that. But the upside of my personal cultural immersion is that like I'm really interested in what's going on at retail. I'm very interested in like what everybody's wearing. I have close friends with, like the Sky Browns of the world, and like a lot of the up and coming kids who, they always want to like tell me what's going on. So it's like you have to be kind of careful, but I think it's like having a passion to know, and then
Mhm.
also being able to to know how to navigate through the ecosystem of internet culture, to know where to be in Reddit, to know like what kind of TikTok should you be seeing, looking, at new apps and things, and just kind of like understanding sort of where they're going, and what sort of trends or cultures bubbling up in their space. Like you got to
Mhm.
really be into it, like all in, or you just, you know, and even then, right, you're still going like, I've got quantitative data and I've got all this qualitative information, and you're like, I'm getting you to the highest likelihood of success. You know, I'm guaranteed increasing your likelihood significantly of success, but you also, you have to work with brands that want to take certain risks, or that are clear that this relevance is very, very integral to growing their audience and driving sales.
Very good. Very super. I can see the passion there. That is 100% clear. Very good. I would love to jump into our rapid fire questions to just wrap up the interview as we're slowly coming to an end. Are you ready for those?
Rapid fire questions. Let's go.
What's the last book you read? Oh, there you go. I should have waited. What's the last book you read?
Last book that I read recently, Stephen Covey's Eighth Habit.
Very good. What's the one thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Advisory councils uh, that are driving social content strategies, like specifically.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what's the one thing that you would want to have fixed for the company?
Like seamlessly automating from educating clients to the the pitching of new ideas right into scopes of work, just to move really, really fast, but not like make it too generic in a way
Mhm.
where you're selling off the shelf solutions. But because we go so deep on organizations and then moving into activation, like not all the time, but oftentimes it does become a very customized experience, which does slow it down a little bit. I would love to just speed up from educating the client to the right to kind of pre-onboarding, right to pre-onboarding, that process. Just thinking from the heart and off the cuff.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
The last thing that kept me awake at night with the company was, how bad is this pandemic? I mean, like not like how bad is it, like, because it's bad, right? But just, what do I know? What do I really know? Because what kind of education and expertise can I offer when we're in a time where I don't know shit about what's going on? Sorry about that,
No,
but
okay.
and so how am I going to be this guide for these brands to reach these demographics when every single aspect, every channel, every strategy that's been proven, everything that we know and can prove that works is challenged, and so, you know, in some ways, you know, as a service provider, if you will, a guide, if you will, engage youth company. Um, this pandemic has offered huge opportunities for growth because our social and our digital and virtual, everything's in some ways exploded. But at the same time, so many other different types of partnerships and agreements and things we were doing had kind of just paused because we all, at approximately a year ago today, we all just ended up like deer in the headlights. But I will say, like, me like having sleepless nights because of that, it just recently in the last few months started to ease up. And just to be real honest,
Super interesting. One last question to wrap it up today would be if today would be your very first day, that you start working on Engage Youth. So it's the first step. You open up, I don't know if it was a garage, if it was an office, if it was, I don't know. What's the one advice you would give yourself?
I would give myself the advice to map out the client problems that you're solving um, much more intricate, like very, very specific, and then make sure that like on day one, I was developing and implementing um, very straightforward, very, I want to say straightforward. I'm trying to say like blocking and tackling with just pure like digital advertising to
Hmm.
just get that done first and then move into all of the super cool social content stuff. I'm just talking also from like a business development standpoint and an
Hmm.
agency um, building and growth standpoint. Not so much from like the marketing for clients, but serving ourselves. I would say that just because we work with we're demographic, cultural, and marketing, insights and marketing services experts, and what that often means is there are so many like multitudes of problems that come that in some ways like in between like selling my last agency and moving to this agency there were just so many problems and we were asked to solve so many and that you were busy from day one and around 2 years ago when we really mapped out like every problem in a very detailed matrix that was when the magic started happening where we're going oh these like six problems we serve these so well why were we doing this or why were we spending time on that you know it was one someone could say fundamental but I think basic fundamental work is the hardest to achieve.
Very good. Greg, I really appreciate that you took time of your valuable day to give the listeners of Pathmark Presents an insight about, engage use and how you've been, what you've been experiencing, how you think about digital growth, and also how you've been sort of, looking at all of this from the pandemic lens. So I really appreciate you taking the time. If somebody would be forgetting everything that we discussed, what's the last thing that they should remember about Engage Youth?
They should remember that you know at Engage Youth or really any expert that is going to claim to be able to connect with this very diverse audience and very niche audience, if you will, tweens, teens, and young adults, is that the number one thing that you need to do is to be focused on creating relevance for your brand and then distributing that across every single touch point and be bullish about a relevance first approach that drives digital social insights any aspect of what you're doing um, and I would say to listen co-create and commit.
Thanks for being part of Pathmark Presents today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.